How many universities would you expect to exist in Australia? Well, in 2014, the answer was 40 universities, and there were a further 74 institutions of further education. That's 114 places you can study after you leave secondary education in a country which in 2014 had 23 million. There were 800,000 domestic students and 230,000 onshore international students, meaning that for every 100 people in Australia, 4 were studying in post-secondary. And that 4% gets changed every 3 or so years. So the amount of people with degrees continues to rise. In 2014, around 1/4 of Australians had a degree, and the last government wanted that to go to 40%. 3/4 of all secondary students finish year 12, the last year of secondary education. For decades, we have heard the mantra that we need immigration as there are jobs Australians won't do. Of course, the more education a person has done, the less they feel they should do menial or boring jobs. That would all be great if it wasn't for unemployment and underemployment. The truth is that there has been a mania to get people into more training, more education. The education industry is very keen to let everyone know how important education is. Well, education is important, but it's not universally important. There are many jobs that do not need a university education. Of course, the education industry is not happy with that. They believe that education is its own reward. Instead of universities and schools being rewarded for success and punished for failing, they are rewarded for getting more students. Economically, it is unsustainable, as it will constantly be a case of rewarding more and more. There is no limit to more and more. There is a total disconnect between what we need from education and what we are being provided with. I'm not talking about only providing vocational training, but about all types of training and education. Everyone should have an education. It is the amount of education that differs. Not everyone needs more education, and if they do, they can go back to study. But the current system pushes students to continue into further education, whether they need it or not. Universities and other institutions of further education, as well as secondary schools, should be helping students to get jobs. Those jobs should be in the field in which they studied. So people who study engineering should become engineers, and so on and so forth. Of course, not everyone will want to work in the field they studied, or health problems or even death prevent others. But they are exceptions, and in most cases study is done so that a person can work in a particular field. In Australia, universities are mostly funded by the government via the taxpayer. So I propose that when a graduate gets a full-time job in their field, their place be funded 200%. When a graduate gets a full-time job not in their field or a part-time job in their field, their place should be funded 100%. When a graduate gets a part-time job outside of their field, then their place is funded 50%. When a graduate is unemployed, then their place should not be funded. This should also be spaced out over a decade, with 1/4 of the payments made at 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and finally 10 years after graduation. Graduates should have careers and not simply jobs, and this should reward those institutions that did the right thing and provided the right courses. Those institutions that provided junk courses would be punished, as they should be. Education is not its own reward. It has an important function to perform, but the tail should not be wagging the dog, and it seems to me that's how the system currently works.